After reading part of the famous passage in Brute Neighbors, Thoreau's description of a battle in the wild between red and black ants, I wrote out several war poems, one in the style of an Anglo-Saxon poet, or Schoep. The original prose of Thoreau comes first, and then my Anglo-Saxonized version. Here's Thoreau. I was witness to events of a less peaceful character. One day when I went out to my woodpile, or rather my pile of stumps, I observed two large ants, the one red and the other much larger, nearly half an inch long and black, fiercely contending with one another. Having got hold, they never let go, but struggled and wrestled and rolled on the chips incessantly. Looking further, I was surprised to find that the chips were covered with such combatants that it was not a duellum, but a bellum, a war between two races of ants, the red always pitted against the black, and frequently two red ones to one black. The legend of these myrmidons covered all the hills and vales in my wood yard, and the ground was already strewn with the dead and dying, both red and black. It was the only battle which I have ever witnessed, the only battlefield I ever trod while the battle was raging. Internecine, war. The red Republicans on the one hand, and the black imperialists on the other hand. Thoreau did not live through the American Civil War, but in that passage he predicted it. In 1850. Here's my poem that rewrites Thoreau's prose with the line breaks of the Anglo-Saxon poet. See if you can hear a breathing place in the middle of each line. The legions of these myrmidons covered all the hills and vales in my wood yard, and the ground was already strewn with the dead and dying, both red and black. It was the only battle which I have ever witnessed, the only battlefield I ever trod while the battle was raging, internecine war. The insect passage is among the most brutal ones in Thoreau, a man usually known for his nonviolence and the inventor of nonviolent resistance. But he was a very close observer of nature. After reading another part of the famous passage in Brute Neighbors, I wrote out another part of the passage to imitate the line breaks and style of E. Cummings' poems in World War I. Thoreau's original prose first, and then E. Cummings. I have no doubt it was a principle they fought for as much as our ancestors, and not to avoid a 3-penny tax on their tea, and the results of this battle will be as important and memorable to those whom it concerns as those of the Battle of Bunker Hill at least. Now, in this mention of the Tea Party and the Battle of Bunker Hill, there is a kind of a nod of Thoreau to Emerson, whose ancestors fought in the Battle of Bunker Hill and who wrote, "By the rude bridge that arched the flood." But rewriting Thoreau's prose, it has more of an edge to it, more like E. Cummings' World War I style, line breaks that give the battle between the red and black ants a World War I Cummings edge. I have no doubt that it was a principle they fought for as much as our ancestors, and not to avoid a 3-penny tax on their tea. And the results of this battle will be as important and as memorable to those whom it concerns as those of the Battle of Bunker Hill at least. America, I love you. But there's an edge to this radical Thoreau, an edge very much that reminds me of E. Cummings. And yet another part of the famous passage in Brute Neighbors reminds me of Homer. And again, here's Thoreau first, and then Homer afterwards. Thoreau. Or perchance he was some Achilles who had nourished his wrath apart and had now come to avenge or rescue his Patroclus. He saw this unequal combat from afar, for the blacks were nearly twice the size of the red. He drew near with rapid pace till he stood on his guard within half an inch of the combatants. Then, watching his opportunity, he sprang upon the black warrior and commenced his operations near the root of his right foreleg, leaving the foe to select among his own members, so that there were three united for life, as a new kind of attraction had been invented, which put all other locks and cements to shame. I should not have wondered by this time to find that they had their respective musical bands stationed on some eminent ship and playing their national airs the while to excite the slow and cheer the dying combatants. I was myself excited, and somewhat even as if they had been men. And here's my attempt at a few lines of Thoreau as Homer. Or perchance he was some Achilles who had nourished his wrath apart and had now come to avenge his Patroclus. He saw unequal combat from afar. The blacks were ready, nearly twice the size of the red. To close these poets' eye view of insects, here's one of my favorites of Robert Frost. I think it was written as Frost basked on the hillsides of Bellevue Cemetery and thought of his own dead and his World War I friend Edward Thomas, who died in the Battle of the Somme. Like Henry David Thoreau, Robert Frost was able to turn his spyglass around and observe the kingdom of the ant. The Vantage Point by Robert Frost. If tired of trees I seek again mankind, well I know where to hie me in the dawn, to a slope where the cattle keep the lawn. There amid the lolling juniper recline, myself unseen, I see in white define, far off the homes of men and farther still, the graves of men on an opposing hill, living or dead, whichever are to mind. And if by moon I have too much of these, I have but to turn on my arm, and lo, the sun-burned hillside sets my face aglow. My breathing shakes the blue like a breeze. I smell the earth, I smell the bruised plant, I look into the crater of the ant. Robert Frost. Thanks so much for supporting the Essex Art Centerr and this wonderful show. The next Frost event is a super hoot at the Lawrence Library featuring the winners of the 27th Eagle Tribune Contest on Saturday, May 9th at 1 p.m.